Hi, Global Ed Allies. My name is Jussi and I work as a principal in Finland. This is another presentation I will give you. This presentation is about education system in Finland. Another presentation I gave you is about history of Finland. Here are some facts about Finland. Well, we are a country which has a very long tradition of literacy among all the population. Actually, that started by the Lutheran Church in the 17th century and continued by the state and municipalities from 1920s. But facts about Finland. Like you can see, we are quite a small country. We have population which is smaller than in some of US cities. And we have two official languages. More about that, you can listen from my history part. But we have two official languages, Finnish and Swedish. And most of the population has Finnish as mother tongue, but still we have a Swedish-speaking minority, and because of historical reasons, two official languages. And that has something to do with education too. I will tell you later on about that. And what is changing fast now in Finland, that we have more and more people with foreign background. Right now, about 8.3% of the population, but we will have more. And this has very much importance in education, how we organize education. And some pictures of Finland too. This is very important fact, equity. And this is something that our education is very much based on. And all this comes from the Constitution of Finland. And what is important in Finland and in our system of education is that everyone has the right to basic education free of charge. But also, all other education is like almost free of charge. Also, upper secondary education is free of charge until person is 18 years old. So this has an importance how we organize our education. Okay, here you can see education system in Finland. One important thing here is that there is no dead end in Finnish education system. You can always continue your studies. Whatever choice you make, you can still continue your studies. Early childhood education and care in Finland, it is organized by municipalities and cities. It's almost free. There is a fee you have to pay, but it's really much less than the cost of early childhood education and care. Pre-primary education is compulsory and free. It's organized by daycare or in some cases by schools. Primary and lower secondary education means comprehensive schools in Finland, and that's very much free of charge. And that's organized by cities and municipalities mostly. There are a few other organizers, but most of the schools are organized by cities and municipalities, and it's always free of charge. Well, after that, you can choose. You can choose what kind of upper secondary studies you will have. In Finland, you have to study at least until you are 18 years old. It's compulsory to continue studies until you're 18. You can choose general upper secondary schools or vocational studies, or there are a few other options, but those two are the main choices that you have. After upper secondary, there are two versions of universities and universities of applied sciences. And it's possible uh, to go to university even if you are choosing vocational studies. There is a way to go to universities because in Finnish system there is no dead end. Although the main road to universities is through general upper secondary schools. I will tell you later on a little bit more about upper secondary education too. Like I will tell you something more about primary and lower secondary education. There is an example what happens in Finland after lower secondary education. What kind of studies the pupils choose. And about half, a little bit more than half of the pupils, they choose general upper secondary. It's school we called lukio in Finnish. And almost something about 40% they choose vocational upper secondary studies, and then there are a few other possibilities, about 4-8% right now. Okay, this is something about our system. What is typical to Finland and Finnish education? Important fact is that Finnish teachers are very highly trained. And teaching is actually an attractive profession. Not as it's not the same thing in all Western countries. And in Finnish system, the focus is very much on learning. It's rather than testing. We don't have such a kind of testing system than in some countries. And especially in some US states, you have much more testing and testing than we have in Finland. I will have a few examples about this later on during my presentation. And that's linked with ranking. We don't have ranking systems in Finland between schools. Well, in general upper secondary, there are some kind of newspapers ranking with matriculation test. I will tell you a little later on, but it's really not ranking. Our money is not given to schools by ranking. And focus in Finnish education is very much on support. We want everyone to go through the education. We want to educate all our pupils and students. Finnish basic education starts at age 7. In many countries, it starts earlier. Now we have compulsory preschool, like I told you, 1 year before basic education starts. Grouping in Finnish schools is flexible. It's possible to change change groups during the daytime, and we have inside the groups pupils who need more support, less support, and more support is students get support in their regular classes. And it's a very non-selective system. Our schools are quite equal, quite similar in all areas in Finland. There is something about the system, about central steering and local decision. Idea in Finnish system is that there is not very much of central rules. We have national core curriculum, but every city or municipality that organize elementary and lower secondary or upper secondary education, they do their own local curriculums. It's based on national core curriculum and on national laws. There is no very strict orders for class size or recruitment or teacher evaluation or things like that. In Finnish system, teachers are not all the time evaluated. and there are no superintendents in Finnish system. It's more like that principals have responsibility on their own schools. And quality assurance is more like a system which is done locally. It's done in cooperation with teachers and pupils, principals, and local authorities. Here are some current issues of what we have in Finland. What are we discussing right now? Of course, most of these things are worldwide, or at least questions which are quite similar in many European, West European, or other Western countries. One Western thing is that, and it's happening also in Finland, and actually has been quite fast in Finland, that there has been decreasing in learning outcomes. There are more and more differences between pupils. Mobile phone use at school, that's also a question. There is a place for digital learning, but at the moment, of course, youngsters feel very much that mobiles and social media is important to deal with all that. And in Finland, we actually have a problem that our boys and girls are actually having differences in learning outcomes right now. Girls are doing very much better. But on the other hand, girls are feeling more and more depression and very much pressure on life and on education, on how they are learning. So there are differences between girls and boys. One thing I told you already, that we have more and more immigrants. We haven't had so many immigrants compared to other Nordic countries or Germany, France, UK, but now we have more and more, and we really have to pay more attention on them, how they will integrate our society, and a larger and larger part of our pupils have immigrant background. And of course, there is a question about higher education. There has been some changements on how to apply after upper secondary to higher education, and it's still going on. They want to find the best way so that it's flexible enough, but also that pupils or students will find their own upper higher education right away after upper secondary. And of course, it's actually quite an interesting question how to raise educational level among young adults. Although we have a quite good educational system in Finland, I think we have a similar situation than in some other countries, that those who were born in 1970s and 1980s, they are actually now the generation with the highest level of education. There are some things in Western world that we have to solve here in Finland, local questions, and many of them are questions that we have to solve together. Okay, this is something about well-being. Well-being is actually right now an important topic in Finland, Finnish education. And of course, well-being is a kind of thing that really promotes learning. You have to take care of it. Here is a path that there is in Finland from early childhood until school. And in every level, there is a lot of support to families and in well-being. In Finland, every family with an infant visits maternity and child health clinics like regularly. It is a place where you get support, counseling, and help for child help and health and everything like that. It's very well organized. And actually, Finland is quite famous of that. Then we have early childhood education and care and welfare and the support for health and actually the starting support for learning is all already there in early childhood education and care. And when a child starts school at the age of 7, uh, there is a support inside school. We have support for health and support for learning. Those two important things. And all that, of course, is something that promotes learning, promotes health, and all this is very, very important just to make sure that everyone is doing fine. Um, this is a picture of a Finnish uh, system of support, which is the same in uh, in schools and in preschool system too. So we have a general support, and that means that there is a support that every child gets. We have organized our learning so that we try to make sure that individuals find their own way and get the best teaching that is best for them and for their learning. And general support is the everyday support that own teacher gives. Then we have intensified support. And when a child gets intensified support, there are official documents that are done. And in the documents, it is listed what kind of support this child needs and and who is the one who is going to give that support and how it is given. And this is a time when also special uh, needs teachers help class teachers or subject teachers to give that help. And then we have a level of special support. There are some extra documents you have to fill, and you also need to have some professionals like psychologists uh, who write some documents about a child after they have made their own inquiries. Special support is a kind of thing that is possible that a child gets special support in the same big group where a child has been studying before, or a child can get that support from a smaller special class. It depends of the school, it depends of the child, it depends what kind of support the child gets. This is a level where child has a right that a special needs teacher helps the child, but it's possible that there is a lot of integration where that the child is studying with those who don't need any extra support and can study with others, not in a special class. But it depends of child, it depends of school and what kind of need. And this is the idea of the whole support system, that we think the individual child, what kind of things one child needs. It's very individually built support system. Okay, something about pre-primary education. That starts at the age of 6. And it's also free and it's compulsory. And it is provided by early childhood education and care normally, and in some cases by schools. And that's but it's still a time for children just to learn through play, getting ready for school. but not feeling too much pressure on studying, on learning. Learning comes through play, and the joy of learning is very important in pre-primary education in Finland. Okay, there is something about Finnish elementary and lower secondary studies. What our curriculum, our core curriculum says, these kind of things that we try to do in education. There is a very important sentence. Every child is unique. That's the sentence which is really the center of the idea of our national core curriculum. And then there are some other important words, some other things that we have to learn, because of course school is not just learning subjects, not just learning history or English or Finnish or mathematics. It's also learning to live like a human being in this world. And that's why all this is very important. Living in this modern world is, like I told you, you really have to rethink competences. You don't survive, or you cannot just study subjects. Inside subjects, you have to study important 21st century skills. And these 21st century skills, like the competencies, here is the version of 21st century skills in Finnish national core curriculum. But it's a worldwide thing. You can just Google 21st century skills and you find about these same things, put in a little different form, but from many countries, from many systems. And this is something that we really have to cooperate around the world. I will give you a very good hint that, because I would just suggest you that in North America, you could check NPDL, New Pedagogies for Deep Learning. It's a Canadian concept, which is very familiar to me. And it has about the same things than these Finnish competencies. In our curriculum, during the last 10 years, we have been improving these competencies. Okay, here we've got something about the subjects in Finland. There is a number of lessons. You will have those subjects through those years. So altogether, if you count the weekly lessons, that's the amount you will do. I will give you a few interesting things about subjects in Finnish schools. One subject which is always interesting for foreigners. Foreigners might think, okay, you're studying that. That subject is religion. We have religion at school in Finland. It's a historical thing. And pupils in Finland, they study religion of their own. It's taught by teachers, not by priests. It's one subject among others, and it's very much about the knowledge of religion. It's not practice of religion, and of course, it's also knowledge of another religions, and of course, knowledge of ethics, which is more deep than just ethics of one specific religion. Those non-religious children, they study ethics and facts about world religions. And actually at general upper secondary school, we actually have even philosophy at school. And one interesting subject in Finland, I think Americans sometimes feel it interesting, is geography and history, because we don't just study Finnish geography and Finnish history. Of course, we study a lot of lot of our own history and geography too, but we also concentrate on the world, on other countries, and Finnish pupils, they get quite good knowledge of world through history and geography, those subjects they study at school. And I also actually I started the um, first when I started, I told you about two national languages in Finland. And because of history, we have such a long history with Sweden and population in Finland from the Middle Ages have we have had Finnish speaking and Swedish speaking population, and that's why we have two official languages. And in Finnish schools, everyone has to study the other national language. And because most of Finns have Finnish as mother tongue, uh, they study Swedish as a foreign language in school. But of course, still English is the first and the most important language in Finnish speaking schools, but the second language is Swedish. Here are something about the basic education curriculum, some core ideas, something which is very important in our schools right now. We think that it's very important that pupils they learn to be active learners. They don't have to be active learners when they come to school, but that's much more like a goal. Sustainable way of living, it's very important. You see the world around that there is a climate change, there is a lot of systems problems with ecosystems. We really have to learn sustainable way of living. But of course, it's not only because of the problems, it's also a possibility, to develop a more sustainable world. It's good for economics. It's good for them to find a good profession through that. Integrative teaching is very important. Like I told you, we don't want to have a system where there would be like those special needs children, immigrant children, and other children. We want to integrate everything. Sometimes it's important that those who need more support, they get that support in a smaller group, but it has to be built so inside a school that the whole system is integrated so that everybody can feel that everyone is a member of the community. That's a very important. We are a very small country. We have to build a united community inside this country. And it's important that school is a learning community, not such a kind of system where teachers just give some information and pupils are just getting some information. It's a learning community where we can learn from each other. Teachers can learn from each other, pupils can learn from each other, pupils can learn from teachers, teachers from pupils, and everyone can learn in together and cooperate with others. And of course, it's important to get a very comprehensive education. It's not just learning math, techniques, or language. You have to learn from a wide area of information, of skills. And of course, it's important to understand that we are preparing our pupils for the future, and we don't know exactly what kind of the future will be. We're just guessing that. Here is the conception of learning in Finnish elementary and lower secondary education. Learner has an active role. Like I told you, interaction is important. Learning to learn is a very important skill. I told you, we don't know about the future, but it's very important that we educate pupils who can learn to learn, because they have to learn about things during their life that we have no idea right now. And you have to have a confidence on yourself, you know, your self-conception and confidence. That's very important too. And it's important, you know, to think the feedback, what kind of feedback you get. It's very important when you build up yourself as a learner that you get feedback, and you get good feedback, but it's also important that you get enough positive feedback. Okay, here is something about our general upper secondary education. Like I told you first, with the map of the Finnish education system, there are two main choices after lower secondary. About a little bit more than half choose general upper secondary education. In Finnish, we call this with the name lukio, kind of place where you read. General upper secondary education aims at broad-based knowledge. And of course, it prepares the pupils for higher education. Many pupils from general upper secondary education, they continue their studies to universities or to universities of applied sciences, but not all. Someone can even continue their studies to vocational studies. And there are also a possibility to combine these two. There is one road in upper secondary studies to combine general upper secondary studies and vocational studies. Okay, there is a little example of how the general upper secondary school is built. So they have compulsory studies, and then there are some optional studies. And they can even do some extra studies. So there are, already possibilities in general upper secondary, to concentrate on something, but you still have to do minimum studies of every subject so that you get quite broad-based knowledge. I told you that there is no testing in Finnish system. There is no national standardized testing in elementary or in lower secondary studies. We don't pay very much attention in schools. Like I'm a principal in elementary and lower in a school that has elementary and lower secondary. And we don't pay attention on national testing, on preparation, on some tests. Of course, we do evaluation, but it is more done in classrooms. It's done for the pupils. Of course, we give some grades, but there is no evaluation. There are no school tests or supervisors coming to schools and doing some monitoring of what is the level of the pupils. But after the general upper secondary school, upper secondary education, there is the first national exam in Finnish system. And if you don't count something in universities, that's the only big national testing situation. We have the matriculation examination, which is done at the end of general upper secondary school. And this is an important test when pupils are applying to universities, but that's not the only way to get into universities. Some universities, they have also some exams that you can take for some studies at the university. You get some credit from matriculation examination, and something when you try to enroll a university, you have to do a test there. and they will combine all this. But in Finnish system, in the latest rules, matriculation test has quite a big role, much bigger role than it had when I was uh, at that age applying to universities. And then something about vocational education and training. It's another way to get to continue your studies after lower um, secondary school. And like I told you, it's compulsory to do upper secondary studies at least until you are 18 years old. Uh, vocational education and training, it focus on competencies and on, of course, on individual support. Uh, and but always, like I told you, always remember that there are never any kind of dead ends in the Finnish system. Whatever you choose, if you choose general upper secondary education, you can apply to universities or universities of applied sciences, but you can do the same with vocational education and training. It's not so common to go to universities after vocational education, but there is a way to do it too. Mostly those who done vocational education and training, when they want to continue their studies, they will choose universities of applied sciences. Okay, then we can have some information about Finnish teachers. Finnish teachers themselves are quite well educated because in Finland you need to have master's degree to be a qualified teacher. Even at preschool, you have to have a master's degree to be a qualified teacher. And here are some information about that, what kind of studies you have to do. And what is important in Finland is that in Finland, because teachers are still quite trusted professionals, so teaching is quite a popular profession. That means that teacher training institutions, which are inside universities, of course, except in some vocational extra studies can be done in applied universities of applied sciences. But mostly to become a teacher in elementary or in lower secondary or general upper secondary, you need to do a university degree. And teacher training institutions in universities, they can select quite heavily because there are applicants. And because there are applicants and because they can select, it means that teacher quality is quite high in Finland and teachers are very motivated to do their job. Okay, here are still some facts about Finnish education and some kind of comparison about of Finland to other countries. What is something which is typical for Finland? To see all this, we can put together what I've told you during this presentation. It's important still that teachers feel quite highly evaluated. We get motivated teachers. In Finland, differences between schools are very small. So you get about the same quality if you go to school in different places in Finland and of course in the same cities and municipalities, you get about the same. The differences are quite small. But what I told you, girls still they do quite well the school right now compared to boys. That's something we really have to think about. But if of course Finland is not the only country where this happens. Uh, the cost of the Finnish system, although it is free of charge to everybody, it's quite uh, moderate compared to other Western countries. So, hope you enjoyed of my presentation. It was a little glimpse to Finland and to Finnish system of education. I really hope that I could see you all here in Finland and that you could have a chance to visit Finnish schools and to learn more about our country and our system. And I always say that it's not really the reason to travel to other countries, not just to go there and just to take something with you. It's also to give something. It's very important that we educators, we meet each other around the world and we change ideas. That's the way how to make a better world. Thank you and welcome to Finland. Kiitos in Finnish. That's thank you in Finnish.